What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my mid-game setup for my basic Lightning Storm build here in Diablo 4 Season 3. And now that we're firmly in Tier 4, I've been able to do quite a bit of testing, especially with the Seneschal, so I was able to go ahead and build out a Seneschal setup for you guys in both my basic Lightning Storm build from 1 to 50, and then also the mid-game build that I'm going to be showcasing in this video. Now, with that being said, before we get into the mid-game setup, I did want to go ahead and just go over the Seneschal setup in the 1 to 50 guide before we get started. That way, you guys can go ahead and try it out for yourselves if you're just getting into Season 3. So what worked the best for me in the early game in terms of the Seneschal was to allow the Seneschal to basically act like a damage supplement to our main character. So you'll see here for the early game setup 1 to 50, I went ahead and used Focus Fire, pretty easy attack to get for your Seneschal. And then I went ahead and equipped the Electrocution, the Dusk, and the Frigid Support Tuning Stones. And the reason why I did that is I noticed that all of these damage over time effects actually stack on top of each other and do quite a large amount of damage to the beginning monsters, as damage over time effects typically work really well in the beginning of the game, but then they tend to fall off closer to the mid and late game. So that is what really helped me push through a lot of the different areas in the beginning content, Tier 2 content, before I got to Tier 3. And then for our utility over here, I used Reconstruct. I noticed this heal was actually pretty effective in the early game. And then for the tuning stones, we're using Safeguard just to give us a little bit of damage reduction. Then we're using Fortify Support just to give us more reliable ways to build up Fortify. And then we're using the Tactical Support just to decrease the cooldown. And that's if you get the Tactical Support Tuning Stone. You may not get it by the time you reach the mid-game. So that's what I decided to do for the Seneschal. So let's go ahead and go over and look at our mid-game build setup. For our mid-game setup, all of our assigned skills are exactly the same. We're using Wind Shear, we're using Lightning Storm, of course. We got Earthen Bulwark, and we're only using this when we need the Unstoppable. That's typically what you want to do with Earthen Bulwark. You want to save that Earthen Bulwark for when you find yourself in a compromising position. And then we have all three companion skills: Wolves, Poison Creeper, and then Ravens. And then for our Spirit Boons, you'll see we made the adjustments here. So now we're only running Weariness on the Deer. We're bonded into the Eagle, and we're grabbing Scythe Talons as well as Avian Wrath for that multiplicative critical strike damage bonus. Then for the Wolf, we're running Pack Leader to help reset our companion skills so we can use our Poison Creeper more often. And then for the Snake, we're using Overload still. Now moving down to the equipment, I have made a couple changes with the aspects, and I did go ahead and incorporate the affixes on the gear. However, for me, I really don't start looking at affixes until I reach Tier 4. The only ones I'm typically looking for are movement speed on the boots and the amulet. So this build is actually going to be 70 plus, as it's stated in the description of the build, so that way you guys can utilize this build all the way up until level 100. However, this will be the very last build guide I'm making for leveling before I release my official in-game builds for Season 3. So starting off with our helmet, we're running the Juggernaut's aspect, and this one is insanely powerful. This one's the brand new aspect they released for Season 3, and it gives you a huge chunk of armor at only the cost of doubling your evade cooldown. And this one is going to be a staple in most of my builds, I think, throughout Season 3. So definitely replaces Disobedience, and honestly, guys, it's going to make reaching armor cap super easy. Then for our chest piece, we're running the Aspect of Might. Then for the gloves, if you get lucky, get the Unsung Ascetic Wraps. These things are amazing. Now, if you watched one of my previous videos I made for all of the things I would change for the Druid in Season 3, if I had control of the Druid, these gloves basically make exactly what I wanted for Lightning Storm happen. So it gives you a lot more Lightning Storm strikes. It not only does that, but it also gives you additional Lightning Storm strikes when you crit strike. So it gives you a massive boost to your single target damage with Lightning Storm. And then on top of all of that, the affixes on these gloves are absolutely insane. Not only do they have critical strike chance and lucky hit chance, which are must-haves for your gloves, but then they give you ranks to Lightning Storm, and then they also give you ranks to the Defiance passive, which further gives you more multiplicative damage towards elite enemies with your nature magic skills. So these gloves are absolutely insane. They make Lightning Storm feel so good, and I am happy that they are in the game. So if you guys get lucky in the mid-game to pick these up, definitely use them. You'll love them, and you'll find out exactly what I'm talking about when you start casting your Lightning Storms after you get these gloves. For our pants, we're still running the aspect of Mending Stone, and again, I like that just to increase the duration of our bulwark. For the boots, we're doing the symbiotic aspect because I went ahead and swapped over to a Nature's Fury setup. Now for a weapon, I prefer to have a two-hand weapon, preferably a two-handed staff, and I like to run the Shepherd's aspect on my staff so that way I get that double bonus from having companions towards our core skills. Then for the amulet, we're running the aspect of Retaliation so we get that nice multiplicative damage bonus while we're fortified. Then for our first ring, we're doing aspect of Stampede just to continue to buff up our Shepherd's aspect. And then for our second ring, the Lightning Dancer's aspect, and this can honestly be a flex spot. However, the amount of AoE damage you get when you have the Ascetic Wraps plus the Lightning Dancer's aspect, I mean, you just delete screens of enemies. It's absolutely insane. So I still prefer the Lightning Dancer's aspect, but like I said, this is a flex spot. So if you guys prefer something else, go ahead and run it over the top of Lightning Dancers. And then just in case you like to run a one-hand weapon in Totem, I went ahead and incorporated the accelerating aspect here. There are plenty of other aspects you can use. Again, this is a flex spot, so just in case you guys like running a Totem, go ahead and use whatever affix you prefer. I like accelerating aspect. Now for the affixes on our gear, and again, this is something I typically don't get into until I reach tier 4 and start farming up my in-game gear, but I went ahead and incorporated it here just so that way you guys would have something to follow along if you so chose to. So for the helmet, we're doing willpower, cooldown reduction, total armor, and all stats. For the chest, we're doing the damage reduction from poison enemies, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction, and damage reduction while fortified. And really, you can do any combination of damage reduction, all stats, or willpower, whatever you really prefer. But if you get lucky to have a quadruple damage reduction roll on your chest piece, that's great. I hope you get the same thing when you hit tier 4. And then for our gloves, I went ahead and incorporated some affixes here, even though I really hope you guys get the Ascetic Wraps. So crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, ranks to lightning storm, and attack speed if you guys do not get the Ascetic Wraps. Then for our pants, we're doing dodge chance, damage reduction while fortified, total armor, and damage reduction from poison enemies. Then for our boots, we're using movement speed, spirit cost reduction, dodge chance, and all stats. For our weapon, we're using all stats, willpower, core skill damage, and critical strike damage. Then for our amulet, we're going movement speed, spirit cost reduction, dodge chance, and ranks of the Envenom passive. And that's a flex spot. You can choose whatever affix you want on the ranks of Envenom passive. I like it just because we're just increasing the multiplier towards our critical strike damage. Then for both of the rings, we're going lucky hit chance, damage to distant, damage to close enemies, and critical strike chance. And the reason why we are running damage to distant and damage to close enemies is just to buff up that Thunderstruck legendary node on our Paragon board, because we will be picking up that board early on to boost up our damage with our storm skills. And then last but not least, if you are running an offhand weapon, we're using spirit cost reduction, crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, and again, a little bit of cooldown never hurts. Now for our gems, pretty much the same. We're using emeralds. The only thing we changed is now we're doing sapphires on the armor for the damage reduction while fortified, and then diamonds on the jewelry to increase our resistances. Now for our Seneschal. Now I know this guy has a bit of a bad rap right now, but I'm telling you guys, the build I'm going to make you is only because I can use the Seneschal. And there's some really unique things here, so don't just discount the guy just yet. I think there's some really cool things we can do with it, and I plan to bring you guys a very, very much wanted, much desired in-game Lightning Storm build. And the reason why I can is because of the Seneschal. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So with the first attack, we're using the Tempest attack. I really like this attack. It hits really fast. And the reason why is like I said, the damage over time effects are really good in the beginning of the game, but when we get into the mid and late game, they really drop off. So our Seneschal basically becomes a massive buff pet for our main character. So with Tempest, I like to run the efficiency tuning stone. It gives you a massive buff to your crit strike chance. I mean, 15% for 3 seconds on the target that it hits, and this Tempest attack is hitting like crazy. So you're always going to have a massive 15% critical strike chance increase. Then for our second tuning stone, we're running resource support. So we're getting 15 primary resource back at max level with this tuning stone. So you can imagine we are going to be generating resources very quickly with this Seneschal, and it only costs a small amount of spirit to actually channel lightning storms. So I hope you guys are starting to pick up what I'm putting down, but this tuning stone is actually incredibly valuable. So I would recommend that you guys get this on your Seneschal. Then for the last tuning stone for Tempest, we're using the Swift support, and that's just to generate some attack speed. So this guy is just attacking super fast, and we're generating a lot of resources, and we're also keeping up that crit strike buff. Then for our second ability, we are using Flash of Adrenaline. And this is a no-brainer, guys. This one gives you a massive multiplicative damage bonus, and it lasts for 8 seconds. Now, when we go with duration support and get that maxed out, we add another 4 seconds on top of that, which totals out at 12 seconds. Then we are going to run Fortify support. Now, this is a flex. You guys can change it to something else. I just wanted something to buff up my Fortify a little bit faster, so that way I get some of my damage bonuses out quicker, as well as some of my damage reduction out quicker. And then for the very last one, the tactical support, which reduces the cooldown of the supported skill by 40%, guys. So you're looking at cutting this almost in half, and then also increasing the duration of the buff. We're pretty much going to have that multiplicative damage bonus up 100% of the time. So we're getting a huge buff to our resource generation with Tempest, as well as getting that crit strike buff. And then we're also getting a massive chunk of multiplicative damage off of Flash of Adrenaline. So that is how I have my Seneschal set up for the mid game going into the end game. Now, going over our skill tree, not much has changed here, but there have been some. So let's just go over it skill by skill, and we're not going to spend too much time. So we're using the Wind Shear into Wild Wind Shear to generate resources. We're maxing out Lightning Storm, and then we swapped over to Primal Lightning Storm because we have the Ascetic Wraps, so we don't need that extra Lightning Bolt. And this is just going to give us a bigger chance to immobilize enemies. Then we're also going 1 point Heart of the Wild, so we can pick up 3 points Wild Impulses. Then we're grabbing up 3 points Predatory Instinct to increase our critical strike chance against close enemies. Then we're grabbing 1 point Earthen Bulwark into Preserving Earthen Bulwark to, again, generate Fortify for our character. Then we have 3 points Ancestral Fortitude for more all resist, and then 3 points damage reduction after casting a defensive ability from Vigilance. Then we are going 1 point in every companion skill. We're dropping 2 points to get Ferocious Wolves, so we get more Fortify here. Then we're going 2 points in a Brutal Poison Creeper, so we get that buff to our critical strike chance while enemies are under the effect of the active skill of Poison Creeper. Then we are going 2 points for Brutal Ravens, so we get those 2 additional Ravens to buff up our Shepherd's aspect a little bit more. Then for our Wrath tree, we're going into the Storm skill passive here. We're going Elemental Exposure 1 point, Charged Atmosphere 1 point, and that's so we can grab 3 points in Electric Shock and 3 points in Bad Omen. And then we're moving on down to 1 point Neurotoxin and then 3 points in Venom, because we're going to basically keep all of our enemies poisoned because of Poison Creeper. Then for our ultimate tree, we're using a lot of passives here. So we're grabbing 3 points Defiance for the multiplicative damage bonus towards elites. Then I'm hitting 1 point Circle of Life and 1 point Resonance just to get a little bit more multiplicative damage with our nature magic skills. And then for the fortified tree here, we're going 1 point Defensive Posture, 1 point Nature's Resolve, and then 3 points Unrestrained. Now, like I said in my last video, I really love this passive, especially in the early game. However, I will probably end up removing these 5 points at some point in time during the late game, but just for right now, I'm leaving it as it is. And then for our key passive, it's a no-brainer for me. It's going to be Nature's Fury. Now for our Paragon boards from the first video, the first Paragon board is exactly the same. We're using Electrocution Glyph, and then we're just grabbing up enough willpower to activate the additional bonus here. And then we're moving into the Constricting Tendrils board, and I like to move into this as our second board in the mid game, just so we can get access to these resistance here. All this all resist is really nice, helps buff up our resistance really well, so we get that nice damage reduction. And then I go ahead and use the Earth and Sky glyph here because I want that multiplicative damage for our nature magic skills. And I can get that willpower pretty easily from these rare nodes. So that's what I like to use on my second board. Then for our very last Paragon board for the mid game, I like this one to be the Thunderstruck board and for the glyph to be human, just so we can get a little bit of added damage reduction while in human form, because we do like to go ahead and pick up the willpower nodes here and here, and that will also buff up our damage a nice amount with the additive damage you get while in human form. And we're just running all the way up here so we can pick up that legendary node, because this is the best legendary node for a lightning storm build. It gives us that nice multiplicative damage bonus towards our storm skills that's based off of both our damage pools, damage versus close enemies and damage versus distant enemies. So it can give us quite the hefty boost to our storm skill damage. And then we're just following that up to the Tempest node to increase our critical strike damage, because we have all of those critical strike damage multipliers in our build. But that's really it for the video, guys. That is the mid-game build. That should help carry you guys into Tier 4 content pretty easily. And I will be making my end-game Lightning Storm build. So the next time you see me, this build will have game footage of me killing bosses, doing a Nightmare Dungeon, and then also the complete setup for the Paragon board, as well as all of the best in slot gear for my Lightning Storm build here in Season 3. Now, a link to my previous 1 to 50 build will be down in the description below, and I do stream every day right now for the beginning of Season 3, so do be on the lookout for those streams. I know today I had a bit of a choppy stream. For some reason, I was catching lag every time I would stand still. That didn't really make any sense, but hopefully I'll have that all fixed up for tomorrow's stream. But if I don't see you, I hope you guys are having a great day or a great night, depending on wherever you're from, and peace out, guys. I will see you in the next one.